Well, welcome everybody to the CHEK blog. Hey, Jator, my old friend, it's good to see you again.
Good to see you, my young friend.
I think I've got you by a few years, so it should be the other way around.
Yeah, you probably do have me by a few years, and because of the way that I know you treat yourself, I know your physiology is much younger than the average 40-something-year-old.
That's very kind of you. I try to do right. Well, it's good to see you. We've been doing this series on the simplicity and complexity of fat loss. This has been a great series. But there's one topic that we haven't covered that you and I have been discussing in the past that I think is going to be really important, and you're going to cover today, and that's craving.
Mm-hmm.
And craving is, I think, it's such a great topic to talk about because it's packed with all these emotions, right? And people, I think, have a really difficult time to know how to interpret them. What do they mean, and
Mm.
what do you do with them? So I'm glad we're talking about this today.
Yeah, I think it's a really complex topic, as are all of the other ones that we've
Yeah.
danced with. And for me, the complexity of it for me is that it's something that I experience in my own life, and um, because I experience it quite often in my own life, I've had a lot of experience of considering what's underneath this idea of craving. And in some respect, a lot of what we've talked about from HPA access, stress perspective, a food reward perspective, a palatability perspective. Those things all play a role here too, because the more stressed or chronically stressed the person is, what's interesting is that that can actually change and create change in the ecosystem of the microbiome or gut flora. And it can change that environment so that that bacteria actually has a higher level of craving certain foods. So it's been shown now in research that some of our cravings are actually driven by our bacteria, not simply by our kind of conscious awareness or unconscious lack of awareness. So we have this potential that it's being craving from our gut bacteria, which is interesting to consider, at least for me. And then we have this other perspective that is, from our macronutrient videos. There's all of this idea around what macronutrient ratio is the proper one for what population. And there's usually blanket statements. So we have right now essentially the ketogenic diet. We have the high carb folks, or more of the repeat folks. And then we have everything else in between. And what's really interesting to me about all of those macronutrient ratios is that in my experience of cravings, when I eat macronutrient ratios, that I'm listening to my body, not listening to someone else's research or someone else's idea. Sometimes it doesn't make any logical sense, at least from what I've been taught. And that's why I really enjoy sometimes using muscle testing or dowsing to guide my choices, which has taught me a structure to be a little bit more flexible with what my body needs. And when I allow myself to be more flexible with what macronutrients represent to me, then I have a tendency to eat foods that support my process, my performance, my mental and emotional state, and I notice that my cravings go down. So that's also interesting to me. And then the most interesting thing to me is what do cravings represent to us?
Yeah.
The emotional piece of cravings. And there's a lot of facets to that. But one of the things that comes up quite frequently that we've talked about as well is sometimes cravings can be driven by our need to feel shame and or guilt. So we have a craving for something bad. We eat it, and then we get to feel bad about eating it, and we actually have an unconscious agenda to feel those bad feelings because that's where we're familiar. We're not familiar feeling good about ourselves as much. We're more familiar, for some of us, shaming and guilting ourselves. So the craving can actually be driven by this idea of, I shouldn't eat this, therefore I have to eat this, so I can feel my negative feelings about eating it, and then I can beat myself up about eating it, which then I can reevaluate and say, I'm not going to do that again, so that we can come and rescue ourselves.
Yeah.
So we go from like victim to punisher to rescuer, and we keep this cycle going.
Yeah.
And I find that really fascinating because I have that cycle too.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, cool. How do I get out of that cycle if that's part of it, which we'll give some practical guidelines around how to get out of it. So that's one piece that I've noticed around cravings.
Yeah.
The other piece that I've noticed around cravings is for a lot of us, food is a way that we comfort ourselves. And what I notice with myself and with clients, usually when I have cravings, they're driven by something emotionally that's going on in the background that either I have some level of awareness of or I don't have some level of awareness of. And I'm looking for food to comfort me, to comfort myself about these feelings, or to deflect from those feelings. So I notice, let's say, if I'm having some kind of emotional turmoil, let's say in a friendship in my life, or I get a big bill out of nowhere, I'll notice that my craving will go up.
Yeah.
My cravings for foods that I shouldn't be eating, which is another topic that we can dive into, that my cravings will go up when I'm in this emotional turmoil or overwhelm, because from my childhood, that's one way that I learned to have a sense of control. When my parents got divorced, I felt very out of control. I felt aspects of myself was responsible for my parents' divorce. So how do I create a sense of control in that environment where I feel out of control? Well, food was a very easy one for me. Some people use food. Some people use exercise. Some people use meditation. Some people will use shifting a lot. People will use reading everything. Some people will use all kinds of ways that we deflect from our unresolved feelings. And I find that really interesting around the topic of cravings, because it's close to my heart and it's something that I still struggle with, quite honestly. And it's still a work in progress for me. And I think even that language around what I just said, I still struggle with, is what I mean by that is one of the ways to get out of sabotaging ourselves through craving is to actually embrace our craving. It's almost paradoxical.
Yeah.
So if I create a situation where, let's say tonight I crave a flourless chocolate cake, and I happen to have one, let's just say.
Right.
And I eat it. What I've learned in my craving is instead of turn that into eating it and then shaming and guilting myself about it, I'll consciously make a choice to enjoy it. And I'll also consciously guess around how old do I feel and what age wants this cake. So let's just say 12 years old comes up. So then before eating the cake, I'll connect with my 12-year-old and I'll acknowledge him for whatever's going on inside of him and however he's feeling. And I'll also acknowledge that he wants to eat cake. And I'll say, okay, let's enjoy that together. And the paradox is that actually starts to dissolve the amount that we crave. Maybe said it another way. If I say, James, don't think the color red, what did you just think?
Red, of course.
Of course. So if I say, don't have cravings and I create shame and guilt around that, it accentuates my need to have craving. Rather than if I acknowledge it, I notice it, and essentially functionally parent myself through compassion and empathy, it helps to dissolve the reactive behavior of eliciting that response.
So rather than reinforcing, because I think that would be my first reaction is, well, look, if you engage in that, right, if you sort of embrace it, does it reinforce it?
Isn't it? I mean, that's the very interesting piece, and that's the paradox of it. Is that we've been trained, at least in my experience, that if we acknowledge it, notice it, and embrace it, it's going to run out of control. That's just not my experience. And it's not my client's experience. In fact, what I see in my practice with most of my clients, the more that I can help them learn how to acknowledge, notice, validate, and inspire themselves rather than shame and fear themselves out of doing things, amazing change happens. Amazing. And it's almost, it's very similar to, as you know, I like superheroes. It's very similar to, I should have worn my Green Lantern new shirt today.
Right.
It's very similar to the Green Lantern. So the Green Lantern's ring, the green one, is run by will. There's another color of a lantern ring, which is yellow, and that's run by fear. That's run by fear. Fear and shame. And in that universe, there's a perspective that fear is a more powerful ring than will. But when you watch all the movies and you see in the comic books, who wins at the end isn't fear and shame. It's not the most powerful force. It's our will, or said in another way, our allowance, our compassion, our noticing ourselves. That's a much more powerful force. But most of us have been entrained with this idea that, maybe not consciously, that fear is a very powerful driver, which it is. However, I don't think it's nearly as powerful as the underrated compassion, empathy, acknowledgement, and allowance of self.
I think compassion is actually a new color in the Green Lantern spectrum now. I think it's like violet or something. Anyway, that was our brief nerd aside, right? But I mean, I guess that's the real coaching challenge, right? Is getting people to the point where they can accept, right, or sort of be comfortable enough with themselves, and to give themselves the permission to accept that part of them.
I agree, and of course, there's light and shadow aspects to this, right? So the shadow aspect might be this runaway train. However, in my experience, it's just it doesn't create a runaway train. In fact, it creates an awareness and consciousness that's softer towards self, which allows change to happen in a different way. It allows change to happen by being acknowledged and accepted through told what to do and shamed. And in my experience of working with myself and with clients around cravings is, let's ask the question, what does craving represent to you? What does it mean to you when you want to overeat carbohydrate, for an example? What does it mean to you when you want to overeat fat? What does it mean to you when you want to overeat protein? I think for a lot of us, we stay in this very literal world quite frequently, and the literal world helps us feel this sense of control and understanding, and everything fits into these boxes. But if we move out of that, we move into metaphor, we move into symbolism, we move into paradox, it opens up the vibrancy and the exploration to what's underneath the story, rather than just focusing on the singular story of, well, you're craving this, and that's all there is to it. that's a very linear, logical perspective, which I
Yeah.
appreciate. However, my experience of being a human being is I'm an emotional human being. I
Yeah.
have a spectrum of emotion,
Yeah.
and different aspects of my life elicit different emotional responses. And for me to understand how to change, I might need to explore what emotional responses am I attached to
Yeah.
that this thing represents to me, so I can get into it and explore it and make friends with it
Mm.
rather than making enemies with it.
Yeah. And let's go back to diets for a second, because you started off talking about the ketogenic approach and all these other approaches, and to me, I think one of the real challenges of any of these sort of formulaic approaches comes from the reaction to having cravings, right? Because whenever you switch onto one of these sort of drastic, you're going to have cravings, right? But then you get this, well, it turns into this, if you give in to your cravings, then it's, well, another diet, I just failed on another diet, right? So those sorts of failures, in a way, they're not really failures, but the perceived failure
Yeah.
compounds this shame cycle that you're talking about, doesn't it? Or it seems like it does.
I couldn't agree more. It compounds that shame cycle, and my experience of why shame is really hard to kind of dance with for most people, inclusive of parts of me, is because a lot of us have a hard time admitting that we feel shame.
Yeah.
Because we have shame about the shame.
Yeah.
And that hides shame very well. Very, very, very deeply. And it's almost a shameful act to admit that we have shame. So it just keeps getting pushed further and further down. So in my practical experience of nutrition, when I'm working with a client, one of the first things that I do is I might not go directly right into primal pattern typing.
Mm.
I might just go into, let's start to work on getting whole foods.
Mm.
And then maybe let's start to work on getting to whole food organic.
Yeah.
And then maybe let's start working on getting whole food organic and pasture raised animals.
Yeah. I think
And
you talked about kombucha, right? And another soda to kombucha, right? Yeah.
Right. It's, I love Paul's metaphor of building a rainbow bridge. So it's how do we build these bridges? Yeah. And as we're building this bridge of connection to food in a new way, then as we build those, then there may come a time and a place that then we can start playing with macronutrients.
Yeah.
In my experience with a lot of people, starting at the macronutrient level, and we're saying, okay, great, we're going to start at macronutrient. Don't forget you have to eat all organic. Don't forget about pasture raised. Don't forget you need a half a cup of broth a day. Don't forget to get to sleep on time. I mean, this list is like...
Yeah.
And you look at the average person right now on the planet, under-rested, dehydrated, nutrient deficiencies, HPA axis dysregulation, gut dysfunction, on and on and on it goes.
Yeah.
The amount of energy that we each have, for the most part, to change is like that.
Yeah.
So if it's like that much energy, then we have to take that into consideration of who we're working with.
Yeah.
If I was your client and you were coaching me, let's just say my energy is a little bit wider because of how I treat myself, not from a judgmental place where I'm saying I'm better than anyone else, just simply I have energy to spare.
Yeah.
You could start at a wider spectrum with me. You might jump into macronutrient ratios with me in the beginning because I have this platform of habitual patterns that I've already created.
Yeah.
Which then, okay, well, maybe at this point, macronutrients become important for me. And let's also do some deep exploration around why Jator has cravings and what's underneath that. Yeah. That might even be too much in the beginning for some people. So it's like, how do we build that bridge to the mental and emotional exploration? And that can happen from addressing the physical as well.
Yeah.
They work, it's not a one-way street.
Yeah. So I'm starting to get a little bit away from cravings, and I don't want to do this too much, but it's a question. I have a question that I want to ask you, because From a coaching perspective, and maybe you've addressed this before, but I'm going to ask you again. From a coaching perspective, the Rainbow Bridge sounds like a great idea, but at least in the United States, right, that gets balanced with this, desire to see results, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the methodology makes brilliant sense, but how do you balance what seem like competing tensions?
Yeah, I really appreciate that question. So if we are balancing the need or desire to get results, what I kind of find really fascinating about that question is that if we go back to this idea of how much energy the person has. So we have in CHEK world, we use the CHEK, right? So we can have a picture of what their physiological load is.
Yeah.
So if they have this much energy and we're working on something, let's just get to whole food eating, which might just be the first step, right? Yeah. A very small first step. Well, for some people, it might be a very large first step, right?
Yeah.
That first step perceptually will look like it's not going to elicit results because we're not doing all these other things that we need to do to hypertrophy or lose body fat or whatever it is. That is a myth. Why is that a myth? It's a myth because by starting at that singular place where the person can change and has the energy to change, by changing that one thing, that's going to take their energy from here and open it up a bit.
Yeah.
It's going to give them more energy. And what happens when the person has a little bit more energy on board? Well, their hormonal system starts to regulate itself better. Their neurotransmitter system starts to regulate itself better. Their inflammation starts to go down. Their HPA axis starts to balance out. All of those things are necessary to elicit response anyways. So something I share in some of my classes is the program that you have on paper, the workout program, is essentially irrelevant to me if all these other things are not in place. If you want to gain, size, for a lot of us, we need to be in a lower stress environment to be in an anabolic state to gain size. Now, of course, there are outliers to this story. Yeah, of course, there are, people like Paul, people like JP who can look at a weight and just put muscle on. I have a different body. My body doesn't work that way. So for me to elicit response in my body, I have to focus on the other things that are the soil out of which my performance or my growth or my body fat grows out of. So it's kind of for me, it's a myth that we have to be so specific to elicit these changes. Sometimes we can be general and looking at something as simple as going from eating a standard American diet to simply whole food eating can reduce stress enough in the body that the person actually will start to elicit change in the direction that they're desiring.
Yeah. That's great. That makes a lot of sense. And I guess one of the things that you it sounds as though you do in conjunction with the dietary recommendations, even if it's just shifting to whole food, is that mental and emotional work. And so you're offering them, that's part of the Rainbow Bridge, right? In a way that I think maybe some folks don't understand, is that inner exploration. And that's going to do a lot of the heavy lifting.
I would agree. When I'm working, let's say I'm working with a client who is looking for some type of change in their life, and let's say we are building this rainbow bridge. I started to freeze. Is looking for that. Some of my work is, okay, that's been shared, and then they start to kind of build that bridge themselves, and then they go into this maybe self-sabotage, and that bridge gets cut. That's where, for me, a lot of the mental and emotional exploration comes in, is to explore, okay, what part of you is not desiring to cross this bridge? And then we can dive into,
Yeah.
The paradox is what part of you gets its needs met by not crossing that bridge and staying exactly where you're at, which for most people is kind of
Yeah.
a dizzying question,
Yeah.
because it's rare that we look at our negative behaviors as a way that we get our emotional needs met.
Yeah. 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 And that, and that exploration, I guess, is what creates the space to do the sorts of things like having a food journal and finding your way to hearing what your body needs.
And in conjunction with what you shared, even doing the food journal, that takes energy.
Yeah.
I think this is like a missed, sometimes a very missed piece, is that what's so powerful about giving very little work or play for people in terms of their change process is that it gives them time to create a habitual pattern.
Yeah.
As an example, I drink somewhere in the neighborhood of a gallon of water a day.
Mm-hmm.
I started doing that when I first read Eat, Move, and Be Healthy.
Mm-hmm.
That was a new habit for me. It wasn't something that I was used to. So I had to think about, okay, I got to get a filter. I want to get a shower filter.
Mm-hmm.
What am I going to put my water in that's non-toxic? I had to find that. What salts am I going to use? That's a lot of work, even just talking about water.
Mm-hmm.
So I started to do that. And over, let's say, a couple months, water became something that I didn't think about anymore. It was just my habitual pattern. I always have water. I always have enough. It's just habitual. So perceptually, it takes no more energy now to think about water.
Yeah.
So once that becomes habit, cool. Then I put in another thing.
Yeah.
Okay, now let's put in eating all organic.
Mm-hmm.
So then I started to eat all organic, or, whatever, 95%. That slowly became a habit. That's a bigger one.
Yeah.
But if I gave a person water, shower filter, salt, and eating organic, that takes more energy.
Yeah.
And that feels like a lot more work. So if I can take one or two things at a time, or three things or four things, depending on who the person is, and that's one of the arts of coaching, in my perspective, is we have to kind of learn to feel where our clients are at through their language and how they represent themselves, so we can kind of feel into and use our intuition. How much can this person handle? We can always undershoot, because the beauty of always undershooting is that it can be motivation. We undershoot, they get it done, it changes, we give another thing. And that can be a motivating factor for them to create all of these changes. Now, you look at my life 20 years down the line from the first time I read Eat, Move, and Be Healthy. So I just now got to the place now where all my bed, all my linen, all my pillows, everything in my room is non-toxic. That took time and energy and money and finances. So there's this other perspective that we get into, of this craving getting it done, craving the rush, craving that we have to do it all now, craving that there's an end line to this. And a switch to that perspective is, my perspective, there is no end game. There is no end cross. This is just a way of exploring, learning, growing, and experiencing yourself. And there is no line to cross. There's no finish line where everybody looks around and acknowledges you and claps for you. It's constant, every day. Acknowledging and validating and inspiring yourself.
And this is, I guess, one of the things that Paul's getting at when he talks about process goals, right? Versus like end state goals, right?
Totally. Just having those smaller pieces that take less energy, and that is important, because not a lot of us have excess energy to make change. Why is the average person watching 4.5 hours of TV a day, or Facebooking constantly? It's an easy way where there's not a lot of energy needed. You just go into zombie, and you're just like, it reduces energy, so you can conserve because you're lacking energy.
Yeah, yeah. So the one of the keys then to handling these cravings is acknowledgement. Um, you know, and I get this paradox. I guess I just so in practice, if I'm one of your clients, what do you, how do you, is there a process that you walk your client through?
Yeah, I mean, one of the main processes is really getting clear on what the craving represents to the person. What
Mm,
need is getting met by
yeah,
facilitating the craving.
yeah,
So if we can get clear on what needs being met, then we can start to play with where did that need first come from,
yeah, yeah,
and then we can start to kind of explore where it first came from,
yeah,
and then we can start to acknowledge this part of self,
yeah,
which is very softening, and it starts to build trust internally.
yeah, yeah,
And once we can start to build that trust internally with those aspects of us,
yeah.
then we have a much better chance of moving forward together rather than through conflict.
Yeah, yeah. So a lot of the earlier videos in this series, the peppers videos, those are going to
Mm-hmm.
be sort of really those have really instrumental sort of suggestions about how to do that kind of inner work.
Yeah, the peppers video, the
Yeah,
self-sabotage
yeah,
video,
yeah,
the emotional video that we did on fat loss.
yeah, yeah,
Um, at the end of the day, for me, the most easiest way to kind of consider this is ask yourself if you can get out of the literal realm,
mm,
and what does this symbolize to you?
yeah,
What needs are getting met? Where did you learn that behavior, or where did it first come up? And where a lot of people, I think, get lost or stuck
yeah,
is they turn that exploration into a literal practice.
mm,
They turned it into a literal linear practice.
mm.
Jator, I don't know exactly how old I was when I thought that. Okay, cool. I didn't ask you to know literally how old you were. I asked you to guess.
Mm,
And
yeah,
that guess is, okay, I don't care what number comes up.
yeah,
I don't think your intuition is going to be wrong.
mm,
It's just your rationalization makes the intuition wrong, and then you block yourself from exploring that
yeah,
so you can
right,
keep facilitating your behavior.
right, yeah, yeah,
Okay, great.
yeah,
So for me, that process is opening our heart and bringing this like curiosity to life and moving out of the literal realm and into these other realms that are,
yeah,
I think, hold a lot more exploration value, imagination, and curiosity
yeah.
than being just this literal structure.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Wow. Well, that was great. I mean, I like you said, I appreciate that you talked about your cravings because I think that we all have them. And they may not all be around food, and that might be the interesting thing too. Is that the same process that you've been talking about for food cravings can help with whatever those cravings might be, even if they're not about food.
I mean, we got off the top, we have activities, sports, pornography,
Yeah,
food, Netflix,
yeah,
Facebook,
yeah,
bad relationships,
yeah.
dysfunctional behavior. I mean,
That's
the
right.
list goes on. Even things like meditation,
Yeah.
reading, they're all ways that we can hide from ourselves.
Yeah, running was mine. I mean,
Running is
I mean, it's
great.
crazy. I mean, it's sort of literally running away from. Whoops,
Yeah.
we'll bleep that out, right? But that's it's the kinds of cravings that we have. I think are surprisingly broad. So many different things and so that what you're just talking about, just the kind of method or the approach strikes me as really useful in all those cases.
Yeah, I think at the most simple level, put on the green ring,
Mm,
not the yellow.
right.
And notice when you put the yellow on and then say that's okay too.
Yeah, that's great. So, Jator, I realize that for all of our viewers who, might want to talk to you about coaching, that we always have at the end of the slide how they can find you on YouTube. But how do people find you if they want to work with you?
Yeah, well, YouTube or my email address, B as in boy, period, Jator, Jator, at gmail.com is usually the easiest way.
And your website?
And I do have a website. Thank you. WeHLC.com is my website.
Mhm. By the way, will you tell us what We HLC stands for?
Yes. So WE stands for Water and Earth Holistic Lifestyle Coaching.
Right. I just found that out. I don't know how long I've known you. I don't know how long you've had We HLC. I thought it just meant like we, like you and I, but it doesn't. So, um,
It was really interesting. Quickly, a long time ago in PPS, Paul had a contest of creating your dream.
mhm.
And at the time, I was working with a friend of mine, Tara Rhoda, who was a CHEK practitioner, and we won this contest. And in the process of creating our dream, we were thinking, what are we going to name this?
Mhm.
And we just had a placeholder, and she said, well, let's just put we there.
Mhm.
And we're like, and then we broke into water and earth,
Mhm.
which for me represents grounding,
Mhm.
connection, slowing down.
Mhm.
And then in my experience of 99% of the clients that I work with, they come in fuego, they come in hot. So water is the cooling aspect to cool that, reduce inflammation, slow down, and start to become aware of our behavior patterns, our mental and emotional state, our choices, our values, how we navigate life. But for me, that requires some level of earthing, and it requires some level of cooling of the system.
Yeah, that's great. Well, thanks, Jator, and thanks to people who stuck with us through this series. I mean, I think this series was really invaluable and addressed a lot of topics that that don't get talked about in fat loss, and highlighting that complexity and the simplicity was truly valuable. So thanks.
Man, I'm honored to share. And why do I share and why do I teach? Is because I get to learn so much through the process of sharing and getting feedback. And for me to really master something, I think it requires sharing it. So I appreciate the opportunity to share with all of you.
Great, thanks. Well, I'm looking forward to doing more of these. New topic. I'm not sure what we'll do. That's part of the joy of working with Jator. But until then, I will put on my green ring.
All right, me too. I'm going to put my green and yellow because they're both necessary.
Is that like matter and antimatter? I don't know what will happen.
Yes. That's awesome.
All right. Well, thanks, Jator.
All right, brother.